Inception turns 10 years old this year. Yes, 10. 1-0, an entire decade. Inception, Christopher Nolan's interwoven masterpiece of dreams and spies, is as old as Lady Gaga's meat dress. Where the blue hell is my life going? Originally pitching his passion project to Warner Brothers after Insomnia, it was only after the incredible success of The Dark Knight that Nolan finally got to bring his vision to celluloid. Over $800 million in box office receipts later, it's regarded as one of the best original movies ever made. You've almost certainly watched it a gazillion times by now, but such was the labour of love involved in putting it together, there are definitely some stories of both its production and its meaning that will have passed you by. And look, I'll prove it. My name is Adam Cleary, and these are 20 things you didn't know about Inception. Number 20, the team is based on a film crew. Inception may be a sci-fi heist film on the surface, but it's also, in a sense, about filmmaking. The role that each character plays resembles those involved in a film's production. Or at least it does, according to Christopher Nolan. Dom Cobb is the director who controls how the story plays out in the dreams. Arthur is the producer who manages and researches the missions. Mr. Saito is the studio executive, the man who hires Cobb and Arthur in the first place. Ariadne is the production designer who designs the dreams. Ames is the actor, he plays the part of Peter in the first level of Fisher's dream in order to get info about the safe. Finally, Robert Fisher is the audience, he's merely a spectator to the dreams that Cobb and co create around him. Clever, that one. Number 19, Christopher Nolan refused to make it in 3D. Pretty much every single major studio release from 2009 to 2012, from big budget live action blockbuster to an animated kids flick, was released in 3D, with varying results. Inception was released at the absolute height of this craze in the summer of 2010, and despite its incredible action sequences and visual effects, did not release in 3D. According to cinematographer Wally Pfister, and I really hope that's how that's pronounced, Christopher Nolan refused and said that it would distract from the storytelling experience of the film. The fact the studio didn't then force it on him shows the faith they had in both him and the project. Number 18, Kate Winslet was approached to play Mal. Yeah, sad one for all the Titanic stans out there, as the role of Mal, Dom's deceased wife who haunts him constantly throughout the film, was originally offered to Kate Winslet before it went to Marion Cotillard. Reportedly, she turned it down because she just couldn't see herself as the character. Ultimately, Cotillard gave an excellent performance in the role, and Jack and Rose reunited for Revolutionary Road, so it all worked out in the end. Number 17, there's a subtle reference to Catch Me If You Can. In the first act of the film, Cobb pays a visit to his father-in-law, Professor Stephen Miles. Given that Cobb is still wanted for suspicion of killing his wife, Miles asks him if it's safe for him to be in the United States. Cobb replies, extradition between France and the United States is a bureaucratic nightmare. This is a deliberate reference to another film starring DiCaprio, Catch Me If You Can, where he plays a con man who is eventually captured in France and later extradited to the United States. Number 16, the runtime references the theme song. The song Non Je ne regrette rien by Edith Piaf has an important role in the film as about half the cast. They use it as the kick, it repeatedly soundtracks some of the film's best moments, and I don't care if it was written in the 1950s, it's still a banger. Interestingly though, not only is the song prominently featured in the movie, but it's also subtly referenced in the most unexpected way. Piaf's original recording was 2 minutes and 28 seconds long, Inception is 2 hours and 28 minutes long. Given the whole theme of going deeper with time, there is no way that is a coincidence. Number 15, Marion Cotillard's casting. Speaking of coincidences, Marion Cotillard, who plays Mal, actually portrayed Piaf in the 2007 film La Vie en Rose. She won an Oscar for the performance, and it rocketed her to superstardom. However, Christopher Nolan was somehow unaware of this. When he found out, he reportedly wanted to remove the song from the movie as to avoid speculation that she was only cast because of her performance as Piaf. Composer Hans Zimmer ultimately convinced Nolan to keep the song in, and the wonderful symmetry of the role was born. Number 14, the flight attendant is Christopher Nolan's cousin. Yes, the man is no stranger to working with his family on his films. His wife Emma Thomas has been a producer in some capacity on every single one of them, while his younger brother Jonathan Nolan gets the occasional co-writing credit, albeit not for Inception. This time around though, a Nolan family member appears in front of the camera, not behind it. While the team gets ready to go into Fisher's dreams on the airplane, they get some assistance from the flight attendant, who was played by Christopher Nolan's cousin Miranda. Recognize her? Well, she later appears appeared as a maid in The Dark Knight Rises and as a nurse in Dunkirk. Incidentally, if any of my cousins are watching this and ever fancy bothering their asses to become Oscar-winning movie directors, I am available. Number 13. Tom Hardy was cast after one of his films, but not the one he thought. Given that the role of Ames is that of a suave English forger who joins the team to help get the information from Fisher, Tom Hardy assumed he won the part because of his performance in one of his other movies. And he did, just not the one he was thinking of. Christopher Nolan hired Tom Hardy because of his performance in the Guy Ritchie film Rock and Roller, but Hardy thought that Nolan had hired him for his performance in Bronson. Both films released in 2008. When Hardy arrived on set and approached Nolan, he learned that not only was it not his performance in Bronson that got him the part, but Nolan hadn't even seen the movie, which was awkward. Number 12. Recurring numbers. 528491. Now, you definitely recognize those numbers from a few scenes, but they appeared more than you may have noticed. 528491 are the random digits that Fisher gives the team in his mind, and they appear frequently for the rest of the movie. 528-491 is the phone number that Ames gives to Fisher in the hotel dream. Also, the hotel room where the team falls asleep in is room 528, and the room below, where Arthur plants the explosives, is, you guessed it, room 491. Finally, these numbers are what Fisher ultimately creates as the combination to the safe, wherein his subconsciousness hides the secrets. And these aren't the only numbers that recur in the film. The number 2053 appears on the back of the taxicab that the team pick up Fisher in, while a variation of those numbers, 3502, appear on the front of the train that comes out of nowhere. As for the meanings of those particular numbers, you would have to ask Nolan. Number 11, it was pirated 10 million times in a year. Yeah, not to be a cop here, but piracy is just one of those unfortunate inevitabilities that movie studios are going to have to deal with. Going to the cinema isn't cheap, nor is buying Blu-rays or subscribing to streaming services, so certain people get around this by illegally downloading them. Not me, of course, Your Honor. Inception was a massive hit at the box office, but that still didn't stop it from being heavily pirated too. It was downloaded 9.8 million times on BitTorrent in 2010, making it the third most pirated film of the year. Any guesses for what beat it? James Cameron's Avatar with 16.5 million downloads, and Kick-Ass with 11.4 million. Number 10, the low amount of VFX shots. It's no secret that Nolan prefers practical effects over CGI. Inception, for all the surreal imagery it presents, still uses practical effects over computer-generated wherever possible. Generally, movies that are heavy on visual effects have upwards of 2,000 VFX shots. Inception only has about 500. Things like the Penrose stairs, the rotating hallway, the mountain avalanche, and zero-gravity sequences were actually created through practical effects. Don't get me wrong, the scene where the city bends over was done with CGI because, well, it's literally a city bending over. Try getting planning permission for that. Number 9, Ariadne's hair bun. This is a detail you probably didn't think too much about, but there is a very good reason why Ellen Page wears her hair in a bun during the hotel dream. Since the characters would be floating around during the sequence, her hair was tied up so that it didn't float around. Apparently, the production crew spent ages working out how to get it to move realistically without resorting to a cheesy effect shot. In the end, someone just suggested tying it up, and the problem was solved. Number 8, the snow-based third level was inspired by Nolan's favorite Bond film. The James Bond films have been influential on the action genre for almost 6 decades now, and Inception takes inspiration from a certain 007 classic that's particularly favored by Nolan. You see, our Chris's favorite Bond film is On Her Majesty's Secret Service. In that film, there's a memorable action scene on the snowy mountains of Switzerland where Bond escapes Blofeld's henchmen. This served as the inspiration for the snowy third level of the dream in Inception, where our intrepid crew infiltrate the fortified hospital. No Union Jack parachutes in sight though, sadly. Number 7, this was for ages the last best cinematography winner to be shot on film. Yeah, sorry friends, movies aren't shot on traditional film strips as much as they used to be. With the advent of digital technology, most movies today are filmed digitally. Still, many filmmakers and cinematographers prefer film over digital, and Christopher Nolan shot Inception on 35mm film, with some sequences done in 65mm and aerial shots done with VistaVision. Inception won 4 Academy Awards at the 83rd ceremony, including Best Cinematography, and it was the last one for 6 years to have been shot on film. Hugo, Life of Pi, Gravity, Birdman, and The Revenant were all shot on digital until La La Land finally broke this streak when it won the award itself. Number 6. Saito was written specifically for Ken Watanabe. For Cobb, Leonardo DiCaprio was always Nolan's first choice, but it took some convincing and the refusals of both Brad Pitt and Will Smith to get him to accept the role. James Franco was almost cast as Arthur but couldn't get out of his scheduling conflicts, and 7 different actresses were considered for Ariadne before Ellen Page got it. However, Nolan would only ever cast Ken Watanabe for Saito. The role was written specifically for him. If he wasn't involved, the character probably wouldn't have been included at all. Watanabe previously worked with Nolan on Batman Begins, where he played the decoy of Ra's al Ghul. Nolan wanted to work with him again, but wanted him to have a more prominent role for his next film. Thus, the part was born. Number 5. Don't think about elephants. You're thinking about elephants, aren't you? Anyway, early in the film, where Saito asks Cobb and Arthur if it's possible to perform Inception in another's mind, Arthur tells him that it's not, because the mind can track the source of the idea that was planted in their heads. To demonstrate this, Arthur tells him not to think about elephants, which of course is what Saito immediately does, and he knows where he got the idea to think about elephants. There's a reason why Arthur specifically uses elephants as an example, though. It's a reference to the title of the book Don't Think of an Elephant by George Lakoff. The book describes conceptual framing, the use of certain words to insert certain ideas about a subject into the listener's mind. And of course, this is exactly what Arthur tries to explain to Saito regarding Inception. Number 4. Some of the characters were named after real people. Yes, Christopher Nolan did not take the task of naming each character lightly, and there are reasons why they were given the names they got. We'll start off with the ones that are named after real people. Dom Cobb is named after Henry N. Cobb, who was an American architect who notably specialized in skyscrapers. This is why there are so many skyscrapers in the limbo world that Cobb and Mal created. Robert Fisher was named as a tribute to champion chess player Bobby Fischer, while his father, Maurice Fisher, was named in honor of Mauritius Cornelius Escher, an artist whose work inspired many of the film's visual effects. Finally, Ames was named after Charles and Ray Ames, a married couple who were well known in the fields of furniture design, architecture, and avant-garde filmmaking. The more you know. Number 3. Others were named after Greek mythology and the Bible. Yeah, it wasn't just historical figures who inspired the names of our favorite characters. Ariadne got her namesake from Greek mythology, while Yusuf got his from the Bible. In Greek mythology, Ariadne was the daughter of King Minos of Crete. She aided Theseus in escaping the Minotaur's labyrinth with a little ball of red fleece, which he used to find his way out. Now, admittedly, that story doesn't relate to the movie, but do you know what does? The myth of Ariadne was the basis for the opera Ariadne of Naxos, which is a play within a play. You see, now it makes sense. As for Yusuf, his name is the Arabic form of Joseph, the biblical figure from Genesis 37:50, who had the gift of interpreting dreams. See, very clever. Number 2, some names have hidden meanings. Much like the film itself, we need to go deeper here. While Dom Cobb got his last name from an American architect, his first name is the word for home in most Slavic languages, including Russian, Polish, and Croatian. This is a clever nod to Dom's ultimate goal in the film, to get home. Mal is short for Mallory, which is derived, and apologies to all French people here, from the French word malheur. This means misfortune or unhappiness, which of course makes sense given that she brings misfortune to Cobb throughout the movie. Mal also means wrong, bad, or evil in French when you use it as a noun. Number 1, their names spell out dreams pay. Yeah, alright, okay, you might have heard this one before, but it is still definitely the best. The characters' names weren't just chosen based on relevant historical figures and foreign words, but they were carefully chosen to spell out an acronym. If you take the first letters of 6 of the main characters' first names in this order, Dom, Robert, Ames, Arthur, Mal, and Saito, it spells out dreams. You then add Peter, Ariadne, and Yusuf, and you get dreams pay. That is extremely clever. Well played, Christopher Nolan. So there you have it. Those are 20 things you didn't know about Inception, read to you by a man who reckons he hasn't actually seen that film for about 10 minutes. Let me know what you made of it all in the comments below, and of course don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. But in the meantime though, thank you so much for watching. I've of course been Adam Cleary, and I will see you soon. Goodbye.